right, good morning, everyone. How are you doing? Are you enjoying your time here at the Diz Family Reunion? How many people were here for the Art Smith panel? Huh? That was fun, wasn't it? All right, good. You having a good time walking around? You seen everything that you can bid on and all those things? All right, well, glad you are here. I'm genuinely tickled about this next panel because it's going to be a lot of fun. All right, we all love our attractions, right? Yes, indeed. And we all have our favorite attractions here at Walt Disney World. And it takes a lot of talented people to make these attractions come to life, from concept all the way to daily operations. And this next panel has some of the actors that are featured in those attractions. So this is going to be very exciting. I want to let you know, in this panel, we will not have a Q&A. We're just going to go through it. But if you have any questions, be sure to ask them. They will be on the floor. You can go talk to them. Easy to go up to and talk to them. So I just want to let you know that section, that we will not have a Q&A. So are you ready to learn more about some of your favorite attractions and the actors that bring them to life? All right, so let's kick it off first. Right now, I would like to introduce an author, an actor, a puppeteer, and a show writer. You know him from Journey into Imagination with Figment at Epcot. Please welcome the original Dreamfinder, Ron Schneider. All right, welcome Ron.
Hi guys.
All right, well Ron is here, this is good, but it doesn't stop there. Next, please welcome comedic actor. You may have seen him on The Good Place as Pataball, or on HBO's Westworld as Benny from Flight of Passage in Pandora, the world of Avatar, Disney's Animal Kingdom. He actually clears us of Pandorian parasites as Dr. Stevens. Please welcome David Danipour.
Hey, how's it going?
Welcome, David. Thank you for joining us from 5.6 light years away. We appreciate it. All right, well, next, she has Disney in her DNA from accompanying her father to Disneyland. She's a past Disney cast member, so it's almost like a homecoming. We welcome her back. And in her 20-year voiceover career, she has voiced everything from ESPN's Pardon the Interruption and Super Bowl specials to video games like World of Warcraft, Elder Scrolls, Telltale's The Walking Dead, which I played and loved, Fable, Diablo 3, Fallout 4, and Fallout 76, to name a few. She is the voice of Elektra for Marvel games like Marvel Heroes and Marvel Ultimate Alliance, and also several cartoon characters, including one of my favorites, Dee Dee from Dexter's Laboratory. Anybody love Dee Dee out there? Phineas and Ferb, several Toy Story projects as the official voice match for Jessie the Yodeling Cowgirl, and of course many of our Disney park attractions and shows, including great moments with Mr. Lincoln, Sinbad's Voyage, Midway Mania, Woody's Roundup, Tower of Terror, and our beloved Haunted Mansion bride, Constance Hatchaway. Please welcome Kat Cressida. Yeah, water for you, Kat. Kat, welcome. How are you doing? All right, Kat, I'm going to start with you first. How are you doing today? How are you doing this morning?
Talking to this, right? Voice artists do. I'm used to having it like here.
Yeah, all built in, hanging up.
Oh my God, it totally filled up from when we were doing the rehearsal. You all, I just want to say thank you all so much for being here. Just such a blessing, such an amazing cause, and I'm so excited for this panel, so
yeah.
Thanks for having me.
Yes, indeed. Well, it's a pleasure to have you, and I'm very excited about this panel as well. So thank you all to each of you for going ahead and donating your time. So we're excited, like I mentioned before, we love these attractions, and you help bring some of those characters to life. So let's start the conversation by, just in this moment right now, going back in time, okay? I want to talk to you a little bit about how did each of you find out about the project? So I want to start with you, Ron. We're talking about, Epcot opening, we're talking about Journey into Imagination. This hasn't even been public yet, so how did you find out about the project?
I was working at Disneyland at the Golden Horseshoe Review. Yay, Wally Bogue. I was Wally Bogue's understudy, and this is back in early '82. attended a seminar at the University of Disneyland from Tony Baxter. He got up there and was talking to the employees about careers at WED Enterprises, and he talked about Journey into Imagination, because that's what he was working on at the time for Epcot Center. This is back in the days when the Imagineers could talk about what they were doing. And he had a picture of Dreamfinder and Figment and said, these are going to be the only Disney characters at Epcot. There'll be no Mickey Mouse, no Goofy, just these two. And I looked at that and I went, I want to do that. I went to my boss. I said, you're going to have this character walking around? He said, yes. And I walked right into the job. I matched up the voice for the ride, and they turned me loose. They handed me the dragon and the beard and turned me loose in the park, and that's how I found out about it.
Oh, wow, all right. Now, David, I want to go down to you. This is a project again. How did you find out about this unique project?
So this was earlier during my acting career, and there's like websites where you could submit for projects, and I think initially I would just submit for everything that was for my height and like my appearance. So one day I get a notice saying, hey, come to this audition. It's for a grad student for a theme park. And I was like, oh, that's interesting. A theme park that's not gonna tell you what theme park it is. And you know, I went to that audition and then didn't hear anything. And then maybe like 2 months later, I get a call again to come back, did it again, and then didn't hear anything. And then like a month later, they're like, yep, you're gonna do this. And it's Disneyland, or Disney World. And then they just let me in, and it was Imagineering. I went to the Imagineering studios, and they're just amazing there. They've got a Starbucks that is free. Like, it's like, they really wanted me to use that Starbucks. They're like, you sure? Because I don't drink caffeine, but they're like, you sure you don't want? It's free. It's like, you just go up. They give you everything. So they're trying to create some kind of heaven there. And that's what I remember about starting.
Really just stepping into this project.
Yeah.
Yes, indeed. So, Kat, let's talk about the Haunted Mansion Bride. So this exists. How did you find out about the project? Did you know right away you were going to be voicing the bride for this particular? Because you've done a lot of things, but just the bride in particular.
Well, I'd been lucky. This is on, right? I'd been lucky enough to already be working with Imagineering and had a great relationship with the casting folk there, and had pretty recently before that scratched a few other attractions, and one of them was Tower of Terror. And then I'd also been doing some of the Jessie the Cowgirl. So when the audition came up, originally the specs were for a young girl in her early to mid 20s, blonde. I'm not really blonde. They were looking for something different because I was in my 30s. And so I was kind of surprised when I walked into the waiting room, because it was that moment of the opposite of the cliche. Nobody looked like me. Usually you walk in, it's like everybody looks like everybody else, and it's sort of up for grabs. But in this case, it was like, I'm not sure what I'm doing here. But went in, Chris Gooseman was amazing, and she was the show director of the, I didn't know what it was for, but the new attraction. And she basically said, Kat, you have a great relationship and you really understand the classic attractions, and we're really looking for someone who understands the classic attractions. And she kept hitting that. So eventually, they basically were saying that while they were thinking of maybe having the character be one way, there was a possibility that they may do the Madame Leota thing, where they would cast somebody to do the face and the photography and have the voice be something that sounded iconic to the mansion. Mm-hmm. So I went back probably 3 callbacks. They were very particular in what they were looking for, and their specs were awesome. And I didn't know what it was for, but every time they kept hitting classic dark ride, I was like, well, there's pirates and there's the Haunted Mansion. So I'm gonna guess it's one of those. And then when I saw the script and it was wedding vows, I was leaning towards it being the mansion. So it was a long process though to finally get the final call. And when I got the final call, it was one of those life-changing moments. We still had old-fashioned phones, like real phones back then, and I dropped it. And so it was awesome.
Yeah, that's gotcha. So it was a process of slowly giving you hints throughout.
Yeah.
And then finally, because you know, like I said earlier, Disney is in your DNA. You know what dark ride means. You know all these things. So you start eliminating what this could be, and then you finally narrow it down to Haunted Mansion.
And I think to their credit, I mean, I don't know about you all, but when they touch a classic attraction, please let it be good. You just really love the attractions. And so I was one of those people like, they're changing the mansion? And then to ironically end up being the person who was part of that change, I was, well, this better be good.
And it is good, right? Yes, it is a classic, especially around Halloween. Now, Kat, I want to stay with you because not only that you do so many voices, and they knew who to call because they needed so many voices. And so right now, Frank, what I want to do right now is you do a couple different voices. I want to run a couple different voices that you've done in the past. Let's Frank, if you can, let's go ahead and take a look at some of Kat's work with some of our favorite characters.
Right here, Sheriff Woody! You're the Silver Star! Time for rootin' tootin' shootin'! Woo-wee, you've gotten good!
In sickness and in well, you may now kiss the bride. We'll live happily ever after. Till death do us part.
Yes, indeed. And I got to tell you, some of my favorite attractions. I mean, you're like, these are some pretty big attractions. You know, Tower of Terror. I mean, Toy Story Mania. A lot of fun. Kids love this, and of course, the Haunted Mansion. So these characters. Can I ask you a question? As a voiceover artist, did any of those characters give you any vocal challenges? Because they're so different. Is there anything that you had to like really think about to get in the mood for before you performed any one of those voices?
Yes. Sorry, we're so used to having the mic.
You want me to hold it for you, Kat? I can come hold it for you.
Yes. I think what's so awesome, and what's ironic about that, seeing all those together, is that actually how I got each one of those was very, very different. So, was that me?
I think somebody's backing up. They're getting comfortable, Kat. They're settling in.
So Tower of Terror was a scratch originally, where they did say to me, we're doing an attraction and it's based on the classic TV series, The Twilight Zone. So in that case, they were, to your point, actually open about what it was. And they said it's an homage to, actually I did a couple of different episodes. I did lines from a couple of famous iconic episodes which never made it into the attraction. Room for One More Honey, which is kind of ironic because it's kind of a similar, kind of a twist on the Haunted Mansion thing. You know, there's always room for 1,000. But anyway, did that, and then The Little Girl Lost, and that just sort of turned into. So it went from scratch, which by the way, if you don't know what scratch is, I'm sorry, it means you go in and do a temporary track so that they can animate or do special effects to it. And I guess they liked it so much it just went in. Mm-hmm. And in that case, I was just trying to get as close to a realistic little girl as possible. And that was a real honor. And then Jessie, I had been doing the voice match for Jessie for a number of projects already. Been honored to voice match Joan Cusack for a number of other projects and ended up with that. and then was her stunt yodeler for a while.
A stunt yodeler.
Stunt yodeler.
Wow.
Yeah. Yodeling, yeah, all those. So, did that,
Is
and then...
that because yodeling is dangerous?
It is dangerous. It is, only do it in well supervised. It can be quite dangerous. And yeah, so that's how that attraction happened. And yeah, I would say for each one, you always, if you're lucky enough to have awesome directors, which the Imagineers always have a very clear vision. Obviously, in the case of Jessie, I was voice matching Joan as close as possible, and she's got an awesome voice and a lot of fun, amazing quirks. So you just work hard to get really close to that. And Tower of Terror, again, was just trying to get as close to that universe of the Twilight Zone and try to envision what they were talking about when they were describing the attraction. Try to, if you've never ridden it or heard of it before, can you imagine what that description sounded like for that attraction? It's a what? I don't understand.
I think you can use mine.
Check. Yeah, you can grab David's if you're fine with that. Yeah, check.
Is that the Academy playing me?
No, not at all. I don't think so.
Anyway, yeah, for the bride, they were very clear that they wanted it to sound like it had always been part of the mansion. And
It's back on.
and they wanted it to sound like it could have always been there. That voice had always been part of the mansion. So that was kind of the struggle for that one, was to make it both contemporary and a little bit sexy and a little bit alluring, but also new, but also bridging to the original classic voices. So.
Wow. Well,
Great
I tell you
challenges, all of them.
that first one is very spooky, I must say.
She's spooky.
She's quite spooky. Yes, indeed. So let's talk to you, David. When you're in the attraction and you're talking about all this technical jargon, were you educated on what you were talking about? Let's go ahead and Frank. Let's go ahead and run a little bit of what he does as Dr. Stevens really quick, because it's very technical sometimes of the explanation of what the guests will experience.
Sure.
Okay, Dr. Stevens, they're ready.
Can everyone see me? Yes. Great. Welcome to the Avatar program. Soon, you're gonna have a chance to undertake an amazing Navi rite of passage, flying on the back of this powerful animal called an Ikron, or as we call it, a Banshee. The way you're gonna do this is by being matched to something called an avatar. And I'm here to help you guys get ready.
There it is. So, tell us about that script, those words. How did you feel when you had to say those things?
Sure. First, I just want to say, Mark, your voice is terrific. You have a terrific voice. Yeah, let's give it up for Mark. Yeah. But I'm other things too. You're just not a voice.
I'm Morgan. Thank you, David.
All about you, Mark.
I have no idea what Pandoran microparasites are. I don't think anyone does. It's fictional, but I do have a background in science.
Okay.
So I did sort of understand like what. I went to graduate school too, so I sort of know how the graduate school students are. They just get really excited, and then they're just like, "This is very exciting, right?" Just watching that, I just realized something people don't know is that I had to actually dub the whole thing over because the audio like messed up. One day they called me, they're like, "Hey, can you come to the studio? We need to do ADR," which is dubbing basically. And I'm like, "Sure, maybe they'll add one line, 2 lines." They're like, no, the whole thing has to be done. And so I had to that's why I think the voice and the face might be a little off, but I don't know if you guys noticed that.
There's a moment when you turn around, a split second, because I had to watch it a couple times, and you're not talking, but you're talking. There's a little secret in there.
That's an audio engineer. But yeah.
The magic.
Yeah, but isn't that why we're here, to find out the behind the scenes stuff? Yes. Disney secrets, yeah.
Hashtag Disney secret.
So there's a Disney secret for you. It was all dubbed, and they also wanted me to like inflect more certain words, or like we really like the uhs and the ums, like really hit those. And so I'm like, okay.
Well, David, the reason they're applauding is because, you know, when you go into the attraction, the energy you have is so different, and it's very, the best way I can put it is very real. So, and I've watched a lot of your work, and that is actually your style. It's like, and I think it comes from your background, and you know, you say you went to grad school and you do like science. So there's this realness about it, even though it's all this explanation of jogging into an avatar and riding a dragon, a banshee, an Ikron. There's a realness to it, and I think that's what they appreciate and they're applauding.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, Joe Rohde.
Joe Rohde. Yep.
Joe Rohde. I've never said his name out loud.
You just see it.
I've just seen it. I could just call him Joe. But now I won't make that mistake. Joe he kept going like, yes, I love it. I love this. I love what you're doing. I'm like, but yeah. I'll save another Disney secret for the next round, I guess.
Yeah, well, thank you. Thank you. And let's talk to you, Ron, which is interesting because we mentioned Joe Rohde, and I believe Joe Rohde was also a Dreamfinder as well.
He was the model for the audio animatronic figure.
Oh, wow.
Dreamfinder. If you look closely, it's Joe's face, it's Joe's nose. I was boarding a plane in Los Angeles, and I was walking through first class, and Joe Rohde was sitting in first class, and I walked by and said, I spent 5 years trying to look like your nose. But yeah, he was the model for the figure. He played Dreamfinder in the Dreamfinder School of Drama, the attraction that was upstairs in the pavilion. He didn't do the voice for the character. That was done by Chuck McCann, who also did the voice in the ride, the parts that I didn't do.
Gotcha. Now let's talk about it. Let's go back in time to say, what was it like bringing Dreamfinder to live guests and the media at the time? What was that like for you back then?
I have an acting background, working live on stage, so I'm used to taking text and bringing a character out of it. In the case of the Imagination Pavilion, I was brought in when I first applied for the job. I got to sit down with Tony Baxter and Barry Braverman, who were the two minds behind the pavilion. And they brought me into Imagineering, and they showed me the dream catching machine. I'd just been programmed. It was sitting on a couple of sawhorses at WED. And then we sat down across a table, and they told me the process they went through to develop the concept for Journey into Imagination, and for telling people what imagination was, how it worked, something they had to quantify. And so armed with that information, and at that point I had 12 years of experience doing theme park characters, I got to extrapolate what I was going to do as a strolling character. I didn't just want to walk out there in that outfit, in that heat, and pose for pictures and sign autographs. The character was so rich, the pavilion was so wonderful, and the message that they put across in the pavilion and at Epcot Center about imagination being the source of all of that and being something that belongs to all of us, that's what I wanted to communicate as a strolling character. So I had to find a way to draw the audience into our imagination game, get them to play with me, while at the same time posing for pictures and signing autographs. And so that was my goal, and it took me a couple weeks to get it down. But I was pretty much left to my own devices. I didn't have an escort or anything. I was just out there with the public. But armed with the dragon, we got to play with a lot of wonderful people and give them a lesson at the same time.
And speaking, yes. But Ron, I don't want you to glaze over something, and it's very important because you know you had to work with a dragon. How do you prepare to work with a dragon? You know, so tell us where you found your inspiration. How did you help bring Figment to life? What inspired you? Who inspired you?
Well, I grew up watching Jerry Mahoney and Knucklehead Smith and Paula Winchell I love ventriloquists, and I love puppetry and the Muppets and all that. But in the case of working with Figment, I hadn't done puppetry in a long time. All I knew was when I looked at the picture, I realized what I have to do, my ultimate goal is to make it look like I'm not working the dragon. The dragon's another figure entirely. I had to make it look like there were two minds at work and at opposition sometimes. And so I spent a lot of time looking in the mirror. I spent a lot of time around backstage at Epcot Center learning to aim Figment. You'll notice that it looks like Figment is looking right at the camera there.
Yes.
There's a thing called the Muppets found called the magic triangle. And that is an imaginary triangle that runs from the pupils of his eyes to the tip of his nose to your eyes. And when that is lined up properly, it looks like he's looking right at you. So I had to find what that was and be able to feel it, to learn how to aim him without looking at him. And it had to be instinctual. So I would get on the bus at Epcot Center. They have a bus that takes us around backstage. And I would sit and aim him at people, and then I would ask them, does it look like he's looking at you? And because if it's off ever so slightly, it makes him look dead. It looks like he's staring off into space. So a lot of people play Dreamfinder through the years. You can usually tell if it's me in the picture because Figment's looking right at the camera. So there was that, and learning to hold him properly. If you held, the puppet wasn't very well made, I must say. If you held him comfortably, it looked like he was going to fall out of your arm. I've got this fake arm, you see, it's holding him up there. And if you held him comfortably like this, it would look like he was going to fall forward out of your arm. So in order to make him look like you were actually supporting him, you had to have your elbow thrust painfully forward. You had to bend your thumb down because his lower jaw is not big enough to accommodate your thumb. And so when I do this with my arm, I can still feel him there, as a matter of fact. And that became, that all had to become instinctual. And one of the reasons I only did it for 5 years. The gentleman who did it for 15 years, Steve Taylor, wonderful man. He was the second one hired. He did it for 15 years and had 2 cases of carpal tunnel syndrome and a torn rotator cuff and tennis elbow over those 15 years. So I lasted the first 5 years, from 82 to 87, before I moved on to other things.
Wow, well, you got to still making time there. But thank you for the groundwork you laid, Ron. That's good. Kat, I want to take it down to you. And I mentioned earlier that Disney was in your DNA. And can you talk to us, can you go back in time and talk to us a little bit about those moments where you would, with your dad would take you to Disneyland. Can you share a story, maybe?
Why, Mark, I would love to share a story. I think this is one that comes up a lot in podcasts, but I think that it still is worth sharing, is that my dad worked with Imagineering. We would schlep down to the park, down the long 5 freeway in Los Angeles. If anybody knows, the 5 freeway is in Disneyland, and getting there is quite a journey. And we went there every weekend, and he was there doing a lot of marketing during the mid to late 70s, and working closely with them on graphics and signs and all of that. And also with Walt Disney World as it had transitioned and opened. And his idea of a good time with bringing a kid to Disneyland was sharing all the behind the scenes. So we'd be standing in line and we weren't looking at like Mickey Mouse or waving at the princesses or anything. We were talking about audio animatronics when I was 4. So I got a really good history lesson. We'd be at the tiki room and everybody's sitting there waiting, and all the tikis are kind of spieling what they all are gods and goddesses of. He'd be explaining that the birds run on these little tape-to-tapes. And I was fascinated by it. I didn't always understand everything he was sharing, but sometimes we got to go backstage and I would see it. And so from a very early age, I would say I got the concept that the Imagineers were geniuses. It was incredible that those tape-to-tape reels would translate into these very realistic birds. And also just how much incredible work and craftsmanship and artistry and genius goes into each one of these attractions. I'm grateful that I grew up with that lens. And it didn't hurt the magic at all. To me, it was kind of interestingly separated out. There was the genius of the backstage, there was the show, and knowing what the backstage was made me that much more excited to see how it kind of came to life. And one of my favorite stories is that, and still to this day, but the Haunted Mansion was notorious in my family. My father tried to get me on that attraction probably 5 times before he successfully got me on it. And the first time I was probably 4. We were going to the queue, Disneyland. It was very long back in the day, no fast passes, just waiting online. And of course, you're just seeing this gothic, gorgeous mansion with the green shutters, and you have no idea what's in there. And he loved storytelling, and he would tell me about the original brides and the sea captain, and do you know why there's a ship on the top of the,
Wow.
Yeah, I was going deep into the history of it. So building up this gothic Edgar Allan Poe, Hitchcock sort of story, and we get to the foyer with the music, and Paul Frees starts his spiel, and I scream like somebody was trying to, and the cast member that, I remember this, the cast member basically said to my dad, would you mind terribly just maybe escorting her off of the attraction?
Oh my goodness.
Because it was ruining it for everybody else. And we did that 3 or 4 times before he successfully got me on the attraction. But it wasn't until I was in my 12, 13, 14 that I finally opened up my eyes to see I was literally going through it like this. So they did a great job scaring.
Yeah.
And just the atmosphere itself, that's what makes it so brilliant. I think you all would agree. It's the tremendous storytelling and atmosphere that they build up in it, which I'm going to be going in more so with Tom Morris tomorrow in that amazing panel, really going deep into the Haunted Mansion.
Oh, yeah.
But it was kind of amazing when I was finally 12 to open up my eyes and go, oh, look, there's actually a whole attraction to look at in addition to listen to.
Yeah,
Awesome.
And you mentioned the storytelling, but what a great story for you to go as a child trying to write it, can't do it, finally writing it, to now being, I think, the scariest part of that attraction, the bride. So I think what a full circle. And I think it's interesting how you said you knew the behind the scenes, but it didn't spoil the magic. And I think it can go back to the voiceover acting. It's like, we know the behind the scenes, but we take for granted the different voices and the work that goes into it. And but you've had a very large and big career. You didn't just only do voice acting. You started in different elements of the industry, correct? You didn't just start in voice acting, you started in different parts of the industry.
Correct, yeah. I started out, actually I was on the other side. Right out of college, I went into the other side of the industry, actually being an agent representing writers. Probably because I spent my entire childhood acting, and my whole family felt like that was something you did after you were serious. After you did the serious work, you did acting. So it wasn't highly encouraged. So I went into something else first, and then went into on-camera acting. Got really lucky immediately, just it was right time, right place, whatever, but sort of the mid to late 90s, and ended up, on Angela Lansbury's show, Murder, She Wrote, a couple of times. She was amazing. And then Dick Van Dyke, acted with him, opposite him a couple of times on Diagnosis Murder, so kind of got to hit all the Disney legends during that three-year span of doing a lot of on-camera. And then found out accidentally about voiceover because I was brought in to dub another actress for a movie, and someone literally just said, oh, I worked with Kat and I think that she's got a pretty good ear, I think she could match that. And that was sort of the beginning. It was for Get Shorty, the movie Get Shorty.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, and they needed a scream from Renee Russo. Is that who was in that, right? So I screamed for her for that.
Oh, wow.
And then Jodie Benson, applause. Jodie Benson met me very early on, and God bless her, she was so encouraging. I was awestruck, and she was so encouraging. She was like, hey, there's room for everybody. If you're passionate about it, keep at it. You're great, and thanks to her, I kept at it. So yeah, here we are.
And you talk about voice dubbing. I read this, I don't know if this is true, so I'm gonna ask right now, that you voice matched Angelina Jolie and Julia Roberts. Is this true?
Yes.
It is true.
Yeah.
Can you tell us about that? And what is, we know what voiceover acting is, and if you don't know, voice matching, what goes into that? How do you know you sound like the person? Is it just
Well, I'm going to sound like an uber geek now, but I don't feel so badly now that we've got a grad student in science next to me. But voice matching is probably the most technical part of voiceover proper. And a lot of times it's used, of course, for ADR when the celebrity, the A-list celebrity, has moved on to another project and now they have to do post-production and cleanup because a noise hit the boom mic, or the word wasn't clear, or they changed the word, but they don't want you to know that they've changed the word. And that's kind of very technical. It takes, quite authentically, if it's the first time you're doing a voice and you haven't matched them before, it takes 3 or 4 hours of listening to the voice and breaking down every element of it. The tone, the pitch, the pace, is there any kind of dialect or drawl? Are they doing anything specific, any sort of lisps, or there's all kinds of things that we all do naturally that aren't so glaring that they'd be like a Looney Tunes character, but enough that it gives them a distinct sound. And I just got really fascinated with it and had some great mentors very early on. And I love it. It's probably one of my favorite things to do, to imitate somebody and try to create that audio illusion that it's really that actor. Mm-hmm. So thanks for asking.
Yeah, no, and I think we can really sense it when we hear Woody, when you do, not Woody, but Jessie. We can hear it because Jessie has that very distinct sound. And like, when we hear that that's really you, we're like, wow, that sounds just like Jessie. So we can appreciate that work right there. So,
thank you very much.
Yes, indeed. David, I want to talk to you for a little bit. Now, you've been on Westworld and The Good Place. So what do you consider yourself, a comedic actor, a serious actor? Do you have a favorite? And did you feel that one was comedic and one was more serious in those two roles that you've done?
I'm definitely not serious. You know, crying on cue is very difficult. I wish you would have voice matched my thing. That would have saved me like 12 hours. Maybe you could do like
we'll do like a fan dub of it and we'll see how that turns out.
That would have been
kind of eerie, I think.
Westworld, Good Place, that was fun. They're both completely different shows. I don't know if you saw the episode of Westworld I was in.
It's a brilliant, brilliant show.
It's a great show. There was a lot of naked bodies in that one. Because, you know, I'm in this robot lab, and there's maybe 50 naked people that are robots, and they were just hanging out the whole time, and it was cold. And but when we had to shoot, you know, the director would be like, "Do not robe them. Do not robe them. We're gonna keep rolling." So that I'm doing that, but there's a million naked. That's why it's cut so close, probably, because there's naked bodies everywhere. There's one right there on the very end.
I see it in the back. I see it in the back.
Yeah. You can see how not serious I am right now. Those are fun roles, and I feel like I'm, you know, cast a lot as sort of like a science person, because that guy's a science person. Yeah. I just got cast in another thing as a science person. I don't know if I'm allowed to talk about it. It's
You're not.
Thank you for stopping.
And this character here, if you haven't seen him on this is The Good Place.
Yes.
You died in like 1843 or something.
Yes, I died, and I'm just like, I can't believe you guys don't like vaccines anymore. I would have killed for a vaccine, any vaccine. Back then, if you drank water, this is not political, I'm just saying the lines.
It's just written down, yeah.
But get vaccinated to save your life, or others. This character, it's really funny. I did that before any of this, and now it's sort of like a meme for some places. They're just like using this little scene to motivate people to get vaccinated.
Yeah, all right.
It's your choice, but do it.
What's good about it is. What's good about this too is everybody's really meeting David for the first time, right? So I think we have a new appreciation of seeing you because your personality is like the same. It's like we get it, like we totally get your style. So this is a great experience. Now, as we wrap up a little bit, I just want to jump in here really quick, Ron, give you a few minutes. You wrote a book, From Dreamer to Dreamfinder. And in that book, you talk about your experiences of writing and opening theme parks and puppeteering and the different characters you've done. Can you give us a gem? Like, what do you think is the little, very important to making a live connection memorable with a guest? Because you've done that for so long.
The whole thing about theme parks that grabbed me when I was a teenager and first thought of studying this is that the product of a theme park, the product of Disney Park or Universal, any place like that, is not the rides and it's not the food and it's not the merchandise. It's your experience, your emotional, intellectual, physical, spiritual experience of this environment. That's what you're there for. That's what keeps us. You can go to a Six Flags park and ride roller coasters, but when you come to a Disney park, you immerse yourself in a story. If you're meeting the Dreamfinder and Figment, that's a personal experience. It's not about us. It's about your reaction, your feelings, your thoughts. All of Epcot Center is about inspiration. And I have met dozens of people through the years who have been inspired to follow a particular path in their lives. So for me, that is the reason I became fascinated with this when I was a teenager and thought, I want to study this. I want to study this particular kind of guest interaction, this type of theater where the guest is the star of the show. That's why I wound up writing the book. It's about my 40 years in theme parks, and it's also a textbook about writing and performing and working in the theme park industry, which has fascinated me all of my life. And if there's a bottom line on this whole thing, it's this quote that I got from the book Illusions back in the 70s. It says, "We are never given a dream without being given the power to make it true. You may have to work for it, however." I made a decision when I was 17 that that's what I was going to do. I had this dream of becoming a character in the parks and writing a book about it. And here we are 50 years later, and that's exactly what happened. It can happen to anybody. That's the message of Dreamfinder. It's the message of Disney.
Yeah.
And the book's for sale in the vendor room.
Kat, before we go, I just want to bring attention to your Twitter account. It is amazing, first of all. And if you don't follow, I'm telling them to follow you. I hope you're okay with that. What I like about it is you talked about the young age and your father walking you through Disneyland and things, and the people you work with, the actors, Dick Van Dyke, Angela Lansbury, all these Disney legends. And I don't think you realize this, you might feel uncomfortable, but you are a Disney legend as well. I mean, I think these things are rubbing off on you. I think the guests have a connection to you, and I think it's important. And I think what you do on your Twitter is you keep the vision of Walt alive. You share so much rare footage of things Walt have done and events and things like that, and it's why I like watching it. So tell me a little bit about, as we close, like what inspired you to do that and what keeps you going? Because I tell you, as a fan of Disney and just being a part of the company, it's so much fun to watch the rare footage that you share on Twitter. Can you tell us what inspired you to do that?
Thank you. I mean, I think you guys have already heard a little bit that obviously I got introduced to it very early and was lucky to see through that lens of how much goes into anything that we enjoy and take for granted, not just in the parks, but in life. But I would say that definitely coming from the on-camera side and working the backside of the industry, I just always had a deep appreciation for how hard and deep and strenuous Walt's original vision. To bring it to life, there's so many stories that I'm sure some of you know and some of you don't, but to me it's so crucial. You were talking about the storytelling aspect of it. I kept wanting to crack a joke, but I was like, no, what he's saying is good, just shut up. I want to say, I'm just here for the churros, not the storytelling. But But we are there for the storytelling, for that immersive experience way before Rise of the Resistance. These dark rides are immersive experiences where you forget everything except for the incredible story. Just like a really good movie draws you in. And when I was lucky enough, the truth is, when I was lucky enough to get cast for the bride, bear in mind, I, again, had no idea what the character was going to look like, what the attic was going to look like. They were still developing it. They had a very clear vision of what they wanted the overall feeling of the attic to be, what they wanted you to leave that part of the story with. A lot of care and thought went into it, and I was so honored that Chris and Brian Nefsky and some of the other amazing Imagineers opened up some of these vaults, these safes that had not really been opened since the late 60s, since the mansion had been completed and opened. I was actually privileged to see original drawings and sketches that people had never seen. And you know, we were wearing gloves and I had a mask on, and it was like looking at archives. And then I went into the archives with Dave Smith. I don't know if anybody was ever honored to. An incredible man with so much passion, and he basically walked me through the early history and the legacy of the mansion so deep. I was like, other people have to experience this. So I was lucky enough to create a partnership and get a lot of Imagineers to help me out. And some of this footage that you see, you know, some of it's never been seen before or hasn't been seen by many people for many, many years. So that's what inspired me to do that.
Well, thank you so much. Thank you very much,
Thank you
Kat.
for asking.
Yes, indeed. And thank you very much for keeping the legacy alive. Thank you very much, Kat. Once again, Kat, Cressida. So, thank you very much for joining us, and that is our time. So don't forget, I think tomorrow is your panel on the Haunted Mansion, Kat, I believe.
Yes, I think they moved it to 3 or 3:30 or something with Tom Morris. That's going to be, if you love the mansion, you are in for a treat.
Well, thank you
Some
very much.
foolish delight.
Yes, indeed. So once again, thank you very much. The original Dreamfinder, Ron Schneider, actor, Flight of Passage, David Danipour, an amazing voiceover actress, and several attractions here at the Walt Disney World Resort. Kat, Cressida, thank you very much for being here. We appreciate it.
Daniel, ladies and gentlemen.
Thank you, Mark.
Thank you.